Hello, this is Bo Wells with DiscoverManageSecure.com, and today I got asked by a customer how to prepare a device that is going to be utilized as a gold image. Specifically, how do we make that LANDESK agent embeddable inside of a gold image, and how do we make sure that all of the GUIDs and SIDs for a specific machine are removed. That way, when we restore that image on multiple pieces of hardware, those SIDs don't make it look like a bunch of the same machine showing up across the network. So we're logged into the LANDESK console, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go make sure that our agent is configured the way that we want to have it configured. So we're going to come into agent configuration, and there's a couple things we're going to look for. Very first of all, I want to look for the actual agent that I'm going to be using, and you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner here, there's a checkbox. That checkbox shows me that that is the default configuration. So I want to make sure that that is the default configuration, or what I'm going to show you in a couple minutes on what we'll call whiz config will not function correctly, and I'll make sure and I'll point that out at that point in time. So a couple things that we want to make sure. First of all, of course, we want to make sure that all of the components that we want are checked appropriately on this box. So the most common configuration for a customer would look like this. Every single customer probably has data forms checked. Every single customer has remote control checked. Most customers are going to have power management checked, and we want to make sure that both the baseline and extended components are checked. Of course, you want to go in and have .NET included or not included based upon your specific requirements. So if this is something that's going inside of an agent, I will probably include the actual .NET components inside of that. Then I also want to include an actual inventory scan during the installation, and then whether or not we want to have it show up on the start menu. Finally, going through all these items, we're going to see a lot of agent settings, and it's imperative that these agent settings be the agent settings that you plan on using going in production. First of all, unless you have specifically been told by a LANDESK engineer, I would never suggest checking the global settings. These are items that cannot be overridden centrally, and if you ever have a need to reboot a box or anything like that, this machine has been hard set to follow or not follow those types of items. So don't check those unless you've been specifically told, but pay attention to the reboot settings. This is the actual setting that will take place once the agent install is complete. So if we're going through this actual process, this is the actual agent install setting, so that once the actual agent install itself is complete, it will go through and perform the reboot. This is not the common procedure that actual agent itself will follow. You'll also want to come over and you want to take a look at the reboot settings. These are your default settings. Default meaning when I deploy software, when I deploy a patch out to this machine, how do I want it to interact? Client connectivity options. If you have a cloud services appliance, it's imperative that this be configured. Now, if you have a cloud services appliance that will be installed in the future, just make sure that you have the actual settings in here configured, and then later on we can come in, configure that actual setting, and we can have your cloud services appliance information populated at a later date. That's okay. We just want to make sure that we have the setting name in here that we plan on using long term. Distribution and patch settings, another agent setting that's imperative to go back and take a look at. I would take a look and I would make sure that the actual LANDESK workspace is in the LANDESK program group. And under security and compliance areas, for the most part, I'd go through and I'd make sure that my actual patch management settings were all configured per my liking in this specific area. So we can go through that. Remote control settings, another item. There's no need for the mirror driver anymore as long as you're using HTML5 remote control. Standard remote control will be end of life very soon, so I would make sure that you're adopting HTML5 remote control. Under extended device discovery, do not check these boxes by default. This is something that you want to check on a subset of your devices, and of course we'll be reworking this in our Q4 release in 2015 in vNext in order to have self management to be able to go out and dynamically control these types of items. Power management. Notice that we had the checkbox. We don't have to check the box to have power policy actually on the box, but we do want to check it in that top item. That way, if we ever choose to change this, we can change it at a later date. So those are the main items. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now what we'll do is we're going to come over to our agent, our actual machine that's going to be our gold image, and we're going to install that agent. So we'll come over. And first of all, this machine does not have an actual agent on it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go // LD server, which is the name of my LANDESK core server that we were just connected to with our console. And I'm going to go to the LD logon directory, and we're going to run WS for workstation, CFG for configuration 32.exe. And I'm going to give it a /F. This is not necessary unless you already have an agent installed. But it doesn't hurt anything even if you don't have an agent installed. So we're going to go ahead and run that, and it's going to come up and it's going to show me these options. Now, the checkboxes that need to be checked have already been checked based upon those checkboxes within that very first pane of the actual agent configuration. So we don't need to make any modifications here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in, we're going to click install, and now the agent install process will take place. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go out and get the files that are necessary. Then we're going to go out and we're going to run the actual installation. And once the installation takes place, that's when our inventory scan and security scan are going to take place. That's going to take a little bit of time for those to take place, so we'll go ahead and fast forward. Okay, so our agent has finished installing, and now we want to make sure that this device is not targeted for any software distribution tasks. That's going to make sure that no XMLs for any tasks or anything get nested within our gold image. That would skew any types of tasks, specifically any workspaces or any items within workspaces or our software deployment portal. So what we're going to do now is, now I'm ready for this machine to be sys-prepped. But before I do that, I have to go through the most important part, and that's removing the actual GUIDs from this specific machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into regedit. And when we come into regedit, we're going to come into HKLM, software. Now, if we're on a 64-bit, of course, we're going to be in WOW6432 node. Otherwise, we would just be under software and then under two places. First of all, we'll come under LANDESK and Common API, and we're going to delete this unique ID. So we're just going to delete that, and then it'll also be under the exact same location under Intel LANDESK Common API. So we want to make sure that we delete both of those items. And once we've deleted those, now the machine is ready to be sys-prepped. Now, one thing I want to caution you on, whatever you do, don't delay going in and sys-prepping once you've gone in and done this, because if you go through and run a LANDESK inventory scan, which this can happen naturally, and the agent is scheduled to do this on a periodic basis, you'll notice that my unique identifiers are automatically generated. This is the exact same thing that's going to happen on a machine that powers up, that has this agent on it, that's been imaged with this image with the actual agent nested inside of it. So once again, if that happens, we just want to make sure right before we go through the final sysprep processes, we want to delete from the two locations, which are the two common APIs. We're going to remove that, and now we're ready to go in and run into C, Windows, System32, sysprep, and sysprep. And we'll, of course, for me, I like to generalize mine in the out-of-the-box experience. I want to make sure that I shut down. If for some reason you choose reboot, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and allow the machine to go ahead and boot back up and make sure that those two common APIs have been removed. Thanks again, guys. This has been Bo Wells with DiscoverManageSecure.com.